Well, hello there. It's Sarah from Armstrong Bird Food, and I am very comfy right now in my favorite chair and sitting in my favorite spot next to this beautiful window in my home. And this is my favorite place to be because when it's springtime and you have the sunshine and the fresh air, it's wonderful to sit here and to look out your window with a cup of tea and enjoy all the different sights that you can see. Springtime is such an amazing time of the year to actually start to bird feed and to learn more about birds in your backyard. If you've never taken up the hobby before, springtime is a great time to try, or if you feed the birds all the time, spring is a real refreshing season for you to be invigorated again and to have a lot of excitement again with this hobby. And so with that in mind, we wanted to come up with a couple tips and tricks and best practices about what to do if you really want to bring beautiful birds to your backyard during the springtime. So springtime is an amazing time of the year to see birds for several reasons. One of the main reasons why is that there are several variety of birds that are found here in Canada, for example, that migrate into the spring and summer months when temperatures start to get warmer. That would include red-winged blackbirds, American robins, different types of warblers, the Baltimore oriole, and some beautiful feeder birds as well, like the rose-breasted grosbeak. There's some lovely birds that come to Canada in the spring months, and they stick around throughout the spring and the summer. And so you really are only going to enjoy them if you are doing things in your backyard to try to bring them in, to encourage them to nest, and to encourage them to come to your bird feeder. As well, on that note, one of the beautiful things about springtime is that you'll see birds starting to nest, whether they're migratory birds or local birds that are here year-round. You'll see the birds mating, you'll see them looking in your yard for a porch or for a light fixture or for a tree where they might be able to use it as habitat and protection to build a nest. You'll see them using your own hair, let alone just different branches and twigs and grasses that they can find in your yard, using any material that they can find to build their nest. And it's such an amazing time to see these tiny little creatures not only build these impressive nests, but also to watch them love one another and build their families. And so spring is a really beautiful and touching time to enjoy the birds. So our first major tip for spring bird feeding is to make sure that you're using the right kind of ingredients for this time of year as far as weather goes, but also for the types of birds that you're looking to attract in the springtime. So with that in mind, we have a couple staples that we always recommend. One of them would be Niger seed. Niger seed is very famous. It's a very popular seed for American goldfinches and other types of finches. Also black-capped chickadees will eat it. And Niger, it has a lot of energy content and it's highly desired by these types of birds. So if you really want to see the finches, especially the bright yellow American goldfinches, feeding Niger or using a blend that has Niger is a great way to go. On that note though, there also are other ingredients that finches like that also maybe can be a little less expensive than Niger that work just as well, if not sometimes better. And one of those would be sunflower, and particularly sunflower chips. So sunflower chips are basically a black oil sunflower seed that have the shell taken off, and then they've been chopped up into fine little pieces, and they're just as fine as Niger seeds can be. And so if you buy some fine sunflower chips, you'll find that American goldfinches, chickadees, other types of small songbirds will really be attracted to this food that you're putting out because it also has the energy and the fat content of a black oil sunflower seed. And you can use fine sunflower chips on your own, or you can look for blends that have fine sunflower chips in them. And then lastly, my biggest pick for you during the springtime and the summertime would be to start using safflower seed. Safflower seeds are fairly small white seeds. They look very similar to a black oil sunflower seed, but it's coated with a white shell. And safflower seeds, you can feed them on their own, you can feed them in a blend, but safflower seeds, they don't produce weeds. They don't have a lot of the shells and the mess that black oil sunflower seeds do. And the biggest benefit of safflower is that it's not as appealing to squirrels if you're trying to deter squirrels, and also blackbirds, grackles, starlings. If you don't want to have those in your yard, they're not going to enjoy safflower. Yet cardinals love safflower, chickadees love safflower, rose-breasted grosbeaks love safflower. So really beautiful birds are going to come to your yard if you put out safflower, but perhaps some of the creatures that you don't want will be deterred and they won't want to eat from your feeder, and you're also going to have less mess underneath the ground below your feeder. So Niger, sunflower chips, and safflower, either on their own or in blends, would be some of our best picks for you for springtime ingredients. So if you are changing up your bird food ingredients, it's really important to make sure you're using the right bird feeder to match it. And so with that in mind, in the springtime, if you are using things like Niger and fine sunflower chips to attract small little birds like American goldfinches and black-capped chickadees, you're going to need to make sure that you're using a feeder that is proper. And so there actually are things on the market that are called finch feeders, and if you look closely, they have very, very tiny holes to allow those seeds to fall through. And they also will have perches that are designed for smaller birds, allowing them to stand upright or stand upside down. And you really are going to have to use a finch feeder, a proper finch feeder, if you're going to be using Niger or fine sunflower chips. But with that in mind, if you're using a blend that has bigger ingredients like black oil sunflower seeds or peanuts or those safflower seeds that we talked about, you're going to want to make sure that you either use a tube feeder that has bigger holes that are not necessarily designed for finches only, or something like a platform feeder that's a flat surface, or something like a hopper feeder that has some bigger, wider openings for birds that are large and small to be able to eat. Our third tip would be, especially during the springtime when you see and you hear extra bird activity in the trees because of migration and because of nesting, you really want to take advantage of that and make sure that you're placing your feeders in the right location. Because essentially, especially if you've never even fed birds before, if you're going to put a feeder out there, you have to give it time for the birds to get used to your feeder and to realize that it's there. And so the easiest way for birds in your yard to notice that your new feeder is out there is to make sure you're putting it where they are. And so if you're seeing birds flock in your backyard, in a couple of different trees and shrubs, consider putting a bird feeder out there to try to lure them into your yard and basically giving them the best opportunity to find your feeder. Or same thing, if you're finding that there's other trees or shrubs or different areas on your property where birds are flocking or birds are nesting, consider putting your bird feeder nearby, and there's going to be a greater likelihood that they're going to find your feeder and start to use it. The fourth tip we have as far as feeder placement goes is not only putting your feeders where the birds are going to find it, you also want the feeder to be in a place where you're going to be able to enjoy it and view it all the time. So we would highly recommend that you use things like shepherd hooks and poles that you can put in the ground, or you do consider taking advantage of tree limbs and branches that you have nearby and putting your feeders within 3 feet of windows. Putting your feeders within 3 feet of windows, it's very safe for the birds that they don't accidentally collide with your window, but then you have the opportunity to sit here with a cup of tea or a coffee in the morning or in the afternoon, and you can enjoy your bird feeders and you can see the fruit of your labor of seeing all these birds coming to the right seed that you put into the right feeder. So last but not least, our final tip about spring bird feeding, but this is a tip that applies year-round. You want to make sure that you are cleaning your bird feeders and that you are cleaning them out well. Ideally, you clean out your bird feeders actually every 2 weeks, but we would say at a minimum, make sure that once a month you're giving any of the bird feeders on your property a really good clean. And that means if they're not empty yet, getting rid of any seed that's left over in the bottom of your feeder and rinsing it out with hot water, but also with a little bit of bleach and soap. And there's several reasons for this, but one of them is obviously bird health, that there is bacteria that is exchanged when these birds are feeding together on your feeder, using the same feeder and using the same opening. And as well as the temperatures start to get warmer, that can be a breeding ground for bacteria. So you want to make sure for the health of your birds that you're keeping those feeders clean, but as well for the effectiveness of your feeder. You don't want to have a feeder that's been sitting out there for a month in the rain where potentially the seed has gone moldy or it's just lost a lot of its energy content and its appeal to the birds, where it's been picked over and over again. So you also want to make sure that you're keeping your seed rotated and you're keeping it fresh. And so ideally every 2 weeks, but if not every month, take down your bird feeders and go through them, put in fresh seed, but before that make sure you clean it out with hot water and a little bit of bleach and soap. So there you have it. Spring is such a beautiful time to be a Canadian and to be someone who enjoys the outdoors that you can find right in the privacy of your own backyard, but especially spring is such a beautiful time to enjoy bird watching. And so we highly would encourage you to be a bird feeder, to be someone who takes up the bird feeding hobby. And if you're new to the hobby, or whether you've been feeding birds for years, for decades, we hope that some of these tips about using the right ingredients, using the right feeders, putting them in the right location, and making sure they're clean really help you enjoy nature in your own backyard.